Malik Thornton settled into the corner booth of the Pinnacle, the soft hum of the chandeliered dining room masking the tension he already sensed. The restaurant, his pride and flagship venture in the city's most upscale district, gleamed under the subtle golden lighting, every table polished to perfection, every chair aligned with meticulous care. Yet, as he watched the interactions between staff and patrons, something felt off. It wasn't just the usual bustle of a fine dining establishment. There was a quiet wait, a subtle shift whenever a black customer was seated. Malik, known for his sharp instincts, noted the difference immediately: the way some servers hesitated, how certain menus were handed over with less eye contact, the slight shrug or the tone that laced their words when speaking to people who looked like him. He had spent years building his empire with a vision of excellence, fairness, and integrity, and the thought that this restaurant, his name attached proudly to its exterior, could harbor prejudice gnawed at him. As Malik perused the menu, he overheard a server instructing the kitchen staff in clipped tones, almost impatiently, about a black couple seated near the window. Something in the dismissiveness, the way instructions were delivered, sent a chill down his spine. It was subtle enough that the management could deny it, yet unmistakable for anyone paying attention. He watched as the couple smiled politely, unaware, their hopes for a memorable evening quietly undermined by those who should have been providing impeccable service. Malik sipped his water slowly, pretending to scroll through his phone, every instinct screaming that he needed to see more, to understand the reality of what was happening in his establishment. The tipping point came when the chef, a man Malik had hired himself for his culinary genius but now recognized a troubling arrogance, prepared a dish for a distinguished black patron at the next table. Malik's heart skipped a beat as he noticed the man's movements just enough to catch the glint of disdain. The chef, unseen by most, leaned over and spat lightly onto the steak before it was plated. Malik's stomach turned. His pulse quickened as he realized this wasn't an isolated lapse of judgment. This was deliberate, malicious, and completely unacceptable. He felt a cold fury rising, a mix of shock, betrayal, and deep disappointment. This wasn't just a breach of protocol. It was a violation of dignity, and it shook him to his core. Malik's eyes scanned the room, noting the reactions of others. Some staff exchanged glances, a silent understanding among them, while the targeted customer remained oblivious, trusting in the luxury and professionalism the restaurant was meant to embody. Malik's mind raced. He had imagined confronting bias, sure, but seeing it acted out so grotesquely, in a place that carried his name, made the problem horrifyingly tangible. He realized that no corporate report, no HR complaint, no general policy could capture the immediacy of what he was witnessing. He needed to act carefully, strategically. Every detail mattered: the timing, the proof, the discretion. As he finished a sip of water and folded the menu, he felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. He could not allow this to continue. It wasn't merely about reputation or profit. It was about justice, about correcting a wrong that had been perpetuated behind closed kitchen doors and under the guise of hospitality. Malik's gaze drifted toward a young waitress maneuvering gracefully among the tables, her expression tight, controlled, eyes darting like she carried secrets she dared not voice aloud. That's when he noticed her pause, hesitating with a tray of dishes, her attention fixed on the chef he had just witnessed commit the egregious act. Something told him that she knew more than she let on, that there was a story beneath the composed exterior. Malik felt the first stirrings of hope amidst the storm of indignation. Perhaps, through the courage of someone like her, the truth could come to light, and the rot within his beloved restaurant could finally be excised. He leaned back, adopting a relaxed posture, yet his senses remained sharply attuned. Every gesture, every whispered exchange, every clatter of silverware was a piece of a puzzle he was determined to solve. The restaurant, in all its opulence, suddenly felt claustrophobic, a stage upon which ugly realities were being acted out behind the polished veneer. Malik's mind catalogued every anomaly, every unfair slight, every microaggression, all while maintaining the disguise of an ordinary patron. In the midst of this observation, he realized that witnessing this firsthand was more potent than any report he could have received. He could feel the pulse of the place, the nervous energy, the hidden resentments, and, most importantly, the opportunities for change. The scene in the kitchen replayed in his mind, slow and deliberate, as he considered his next steps. There was no room for hesitation. He needed evidence, clear proof, and a plan that would ensure justice was served without harming the innocent. His attention returned to the waitress, who moved with quiet precision, yet carried an unmistakable tension. Malik understood that the moment of confrontation, the catalyst for change, might come from someone small, unnoticed, but courageous. And in that realization, a flicker of hope stirred within him. For all the darkness he had just witnessed, there was a possibility for light, for truth, and for accountability. Tessa's hands shook ever so slightly as she balanced the tray, the weight of both the plates and the secret she carried pressing down on her. She had been working at the Pinnacle for nearly 2 years, a star in the sea of waitstaff. Yet every day she felt the sting of the kitchen's unspoken rules, the microaggressions that slipped past management, and the outright cruelty inflicted on patrons who dared to be black. Tonight, however, something had changed. As she approached the table where Malik sat disguised, she slipped a folded napkin beneath a glass, her heart pounding with a combination of fear and resolve. Inside, in neat but hurried handwriting, she had written a single message: check the steak. Something is wrong. The kitchen is unsafe. Please help. She moved on, pretending to refill water glasses, keeping her eyes casually trained on Malik. Every step felt like a negotiation with destiny. She had no guarantee that this man would heed her warning, that he would recognize the peril and injustice behind her simple note. But something inside urged her forward, the knowledge that silence had never protected anyone, least of all herself or the patrons who came in good faith expecting dignity. She had watched too long as subtle prejudices escalated into blatant acts of degradation, seen talented colleagues overlooked, and felt her own ambition stifled by an invisible wall she was finally willing to confront. Tessa's pulse raced as she imagined the consequences, both terrifying and empowering. Malik, sensing something unusual, allowed his eyes to drift toward the napkin after she left the table. Unfolding it discreetly, he read the message, each word striking him like a hammer. His heart clenched. Here it was confirmation, not only of the poisoned steak, but of the larger, systemic injustice he had only begun to suspect. His pulse quickened, not with fear, but with determination. He could feel the raw courage emanating from Tessa through her simple act. She had trusted him with the truth without knowing his true identity, without demanding reward, simply because she understood right from wrong. In that moment, Malik's anger transformed into focused resolve. There could be no hesitation, no half measures. He had to act swiftly and decisively. After finishing his meal, Malik lingered, observing the restaurant from a distance, noting how the staff moved, who deferred to whom, and how the kitchen interacted with the front of house. His mind raced with strategy. First, gather irrefutable evidence, then confront the management, and finally, ensure that justice was not just symbolic but tangible. He had cameras in place, security systems that could capture every corner of the restaurant, but he needed direct insight into the attitudes and intentions of the people behind the counters. Malik knew that he could not allow fear or social politeness to dilute the gravity of what had been done. The poisoned steak was just the beginning. The broader pattern of abuse needed exposure. Tessa, meanwhile, returned to the service station, heart hammering, trying to maintain composure as she noticed subtle changes: the way Malik's demeanor shifted, the way his eyes sharpened with recognition after reading her note. She understood that she had sparked a chain reaction, but she also knew the danger. If the management suspected anything, her job, and perhaps even her safety, could be at risk. Yet she felt a rare, exhilarating sense of empowerment. She had acted on principle, and for the first time, she sensed that the tides could change. Every smile she offered to customers now carried a new confidence, a hidden knowledge that someone in power had been alerted to the truth. Malik wasted no time. By the next day, he accessed the security footage, reviewing the chef's deliberate actions, the dismissive gestures of certain staff members, and the subtle intimidation directed at black patrons. His stomach twisted with disgust, but each frame reinforced the necessity of immediate action. He documented every incident meticulously, preparing to confront the general manager, Lawrence Collins, whose complicity had allowed such a toxic environment to fester. Malik's plan was precise. He would close the restaurant temporarily, involve law enforcement, and ensure that the perpetrators could not evade accountability. Tessa's note had ignited the spark, but it was his responsibility to fan it into an unyielding flame of justice. The confrontation was both inevitable and carefully orchestrated. Malik invited Lawrence to a private office under the pretense of a routine meeting. Once inside, he presented the evidence, leaving no room for excuses. The shock on Lawrence's face was palpable. Denial was futile. Malik's voice remained calm but sharp, each word deliberate, each pause heavy with authority. He informed Lawrence of the immediate suspension and impending investigation by the FBI. Simultaneously, he assured Tessa that her courage had been recognized, that she would be a key partner in rectifying the systemic failings of the restaurant, and that her voice would guide the creation of a fair and inclusive environment. Tessa felt a mix of relief and pride. Her small, brave act, the slip of a note, had catalyzed a movement that would reverberate far beyond the walls of the Pinnacle. As the investigation unfolded, staff members were questioned, video evidence corroborated reports of misconduct, and Malik oversaw the immediate removal of those who had betrayed the principles he valued. The restaurant buzzed with tension and anticipation, a mixture of fear among the guilty and hope among those who had long endured injustice. Tessa, now more visible in her role as a conscientious employee, began sharing insights, offering recommendations for cultural and procedural reforms. Malik listened attentively, recognizing that her experience on the front lines provided a perspective he could not replicate. Together, they began to map out a new framework, one rooted in accountability, equity, and the recognition that the dignity of every individual staff and patron alike was paramount. Through it all, Malik and Tessa developed a silent, unspoken understanding. Her bravery had revealed truths he could not ignore, and his decisive action ensured that her risk was not in vain. They shared quiet moments of reflection, brief smiles across crowded dining rooms, and exchanges of gratitude that conveyed volumes without words. Malik realized that leadership was not solely about power or wealth, but about responsibility and the willingness to act when injustice arises. Tessa learned that courage, even in the smallest form, could instigate profound change. The poisoned steak, once a symbol of cruelty, had become the catalyst for transformation, setting into motion events that would redefine the Pinnacle and establish a culture of vigilance, respect, and justice. Malik Thornton watched as the Pinnacle, once a shining jewel of culinary sophistication, closed its doors temporarily, the usual hum of conversations replaced by the echo of empty chairs and polished tables glinting under the overhead lights. The weight of responsibility pressed on him more than ever. He had discovered the truth, acted decisively, and yet the work of redemption was only beginning. He walked through the space, touching the edges of tables, observing the patterns of service, imagining how they could be rebuilt not just physically but ethically, culturally, so that no patron or employee would ever again experience the humiliation he had witnessed. It wasn't enough to punish those who had violated trust. He had to ensure that the future of the Pinnacle reflected accountability, dignity, and inclusion. Tessa, now standing beside him with a notebook of suggestions, exuded a calm confidence that belied the months of fear and tension she had endured. Malik turned to her, seeing in her the embodiment of courage that had sparked the entire transformation. He had appointed her Director of Culture and Community Engagement, a role with authority to oversee diversity initiatives, implement bias training, and create anonymous reporting systems. She had begun drafting policies for equitable hiring, mentorship programs, and routine reviews of workplace culture. Malik listened to her proposals intently, occasionally interjecting with questions, but allowing her insights to guide the restructuring. The transformation of the Pinnacle was not merely a corporate exercise, it was a moral imperative. Together, they walked through the kitchen, observing how the chefs and staff adjusted to the new norms. The previously oppressive atmosphere shifted subtly but noticeably, the staff cautiously optimistic, some relieved, others uncertain, as they navigated the change. Malik knew that rebuilding trust would require patience and consistency, and he committed himself to showing that leadership meant modeling the values of fairness, respect, and vigilance. Tessa conducted training sessions, sometimes using role-play to demonstrate subtle biases and their effects, reminding everyone gently but firmly that they were responsible for maintaining a culture where dignity was non-negotiable. Staff members began to engage more openly, sharing experiences, suggesting improvements, and embracing accountability. Malik also held a press conference, the room packed with reporters, the city watching closely. He spoke with calm authority, denouncing the racist practices that had infiltrated the Pinnacle, outlining the corrective measures being taken, and emphasizing the importance of systemic reform over superficial fixes. He highlighted Tessa's bravery, crediting her with exposing the abuse, and announcing her role in guiding the restaurant's ethical and cultural transformation. His words resonated beyond the immediate scandal, inspiring conversations about accountability, leadership, and the courage to confront injustice wherever it appears. Tessa, standing beside him, felt the immense power of her voice amplified through his position, the act of delivering a simple note now a historical pivot in the life of the restaurant. Months passed, and the Pinnacle reopened with a renewed sense of purpose. Patrons noticed the warmth, attentiveness, and genuine professionalism of the staff, but behind the polished veneer lay a deeply ingrained culture of respect and equality. Malik observed the interactions, seeing once timid employees now confident, seeing formerly marginalized voices heard, and feeling a profound satisfaction that transcended profit or accolades. Tessa continued her studies, returning to college to complete her degree while excelling in her leadership role, modeling ambition, courage, and resilience for all around her. The restaurant became a symbol, a living testament to what could be achieved when courage, accountability, and decisive action intersected. Through the transformation, Malik reflected on the journey from witnessing the shock of deliberate discrimination to receiving a small but powerful gesture of courage to enacting sweeping reform. He understood that true leadership required both the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths and the patience to nurture lasting change. Tessa's bravery had catalyzed the process, his decisiveness had enforced justice, and together they had crafted a new narrative, one where dignity, fairness, and empowerment were not aspirations but standards. The Pinnacle now stood as a beacon, a reminder that even in environments steeped in injustice, one courageous act could ignite systemic change, and those entrusted with power had an obligation to act decisively when the truth was revealed. Patrons, staff, and the city at large recognized the impact, the story spreading like wildfire, inspiring others to speak up, act bravely, and demand accountability. The legacy of this transformation extended beyond a single restaurant. It was a lesson in courage, justice, and the profound ripple effects of standing up against wrongdoing. Malik and Tessa, through their partnership, demonstrated that integrity and action could restore not only a business but the faith and dignity of an entire community. Every choice, every policy, every conversation was a testament to the power of one voice, one note, and one decisive leader willing to follow through. In the end, the Pinnacle was no longer just a restaurant. It was a living, breathing symbol of progress, of hope, and of the extraordinary change possible when fear is replaced by courage and accountability. Word count, 2,000. Wind down, 100 words. The story of Malik and Tessa reminds us that courage, no matter how small, can spark profound change. Standing up for justice, speaking truth to power, and acting with integrity transforms not only institutions but lives. Fear may whisper, but bravery echoes, inspiring others to follow. Progress is built on awareness, empathy, and decisive action, proving that one voice can illuminate systemic injustice. Patience, reflection, and consistent effort cultivate lasting reform, while empathy and accountability restore trust. Remember, change begins with small, courageous steps. You've got this. Speak, act, and believe in the power of your choices. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with friends, and comment your perspectives or lessons learned.